Hey, sports fans, it's your favorite podcast, Socialing the Distance. This week we have Jim Weber, CEO of the Brooks Running Company and a new author. Here's his book. I highly recommend it for all our geeky readers, coaches, athletes, retailers, people who want to do a business better. There's some really cool stuff in here, Jim. Thank you.
Well, Larry, it's good to be with you. And it's a new experience for me. So I love to pitch shoes and apparel from head to toe. It's the first time I've ever pitched a book, but wow. I'm anxious to get feedback from folks. I spent a lot of time on it.
I'm fascinated with your time at Pillsbury because it's ironic. At the exact time you were there, I was special projects manager at Runner's World, and I was going in to see the PR guys at Pillsbury every few weeks because we helped with Twin Cities, which is like 85, 86, 87, that whole time period.
Exactly.
And you were with a great company, and it's fascinating, some of the lessons that you learned.
I loved it. I had a great experience there, Larry. It was one of my first kind of real business experiences in my mid-20s. And I ran the Twin Cities Marathon in those 80s days. I ran the inaugural in 82, but I ran it 3 or 4 times and loved it. So when Pillsbury got involved, it was just fun to be a part of it again.
Well, where you talk about after you hit 20 and you're going up along the river, I remember that because I was in a media van in 85, 86, watching guys just duke it out there. It was a tough course.
Oh, Larry, and I had no idea what a marathon was all about, right? I'd never even talked to anybody. So in my first one, I'll never forget it. I felt so good through mile 20. Then comes that little hill up onto Summit Avenue in St. Paul, and it literally destroyed me. So 20 miles run plus 6 miles of pure agony and torture.
Your business acumen, I think you know everything about business, but what I was fascinated with is you learn from the financial part, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't get at all. They don't know how to read a balance sheet. They don't know how to see when they're in trouble. Is that really, that seems to be such a huge part of your success, that you can translate the financial issues within a company and try to breathe life into it?
It's interesting, Larry. I think, there's the old cliche that accounting is the language of business. There's some truth to that, of course, when you're trying to stay afloat and survive, if not create great returns, for investors and the like. But yeah, my early career, I got accounting. I understood it. And when I was looking at financial statements, I so wanted to be on the business side of it. I started out in banking. And so when I built P&L models, revenue, gross margin, I was actually picturing the products, being introduced to the customers buying them and paying some price for them. And I could translate all that through units and revenue and margins. So yeah, I think I've always been good at looking at financial statements, balance sheets and cash flow included, and seeing the business, the people, the inventory, the customers behind it. And it's been a tremendous help to me because, when you're selling a product at no profit, that that's not something you want to bet on because you're not going to be able to sustain that activity. So yeah, I learned a lot. And I think understanding the numbers and how they flowed through was super helpful.
So when I first heard about you, so I dealt with Helen Rocky for a long time, the farmers. The first president I dealt with there after Turner was Tom Carmody, because he went to the same high school I did. And he just said, hey, I got to buy ads from you, Eder. So, that's how we got involved with Brooks. But I remember talking to some friends about when you let Big Five know, yeah, that party was over. And we were kind of going, that's $11 million in your business. What the hell are you doing? And what I was thinking about, and I remember an early conversation with, and I don't know if it was with Dan Sheridan, now you're North America president, but it was about, hey, we weren't making money from this. And I got that. I'm like going, because you saw all the craziness within the running shoe business. People did that stuff all the time. And the story you have in the book, which again, love, where Big Five tried to tell you that they wanted to sell your shoes at $19.99, you must have had apoplexy. How did you deal with that one?
Larry, it's interesting. It looked like it was bold and courageous, and we had a lot of vision around it. And we did it. We had vision around becoming a running brand because the shoes that people were enjoying and the retailers wanted to buy were all our performance running styles.
Sure.
And so the other stuff, all of the special makeup product at $30, was retailer driven, merchandising driven, and that was over half the business. And so when we started to look under the hood, our margins on those products were 30% or less. And when you add in inventory risk, you're not making any money at that level. You're just not. You take out commissions and everything else. So we knew at $30 we were in trouble. So I went down and we wanted to focus on performance products, but I hadn't met them. So we were listening and having a good conversation. And they literally said, hey, we see a lot of opportunity for Brooks, but we really see it at $19.99. I just knew it was over. I just knew it was over because we weren't good at that price point product. And there's, all the big brands have great collections in those casual family footwear price points. We were not that good at it. And plus, when you're not making money on it, we knew we would shrink the business, but I knew we'd actually generate cash flow because we'd free up that inventory, which we had to do. And we'd no longer break even on that product. So, and guess what? The real of it was, Larry, all of our product people started to focus on the performance product, and it got better every season. Just by focusing on it got better. Yeah, so that was, sometimes it is easy to walk away from business when it's actually hurting you, not helping you. It's hurting your brand because we were everything to everybody, so to speak, and it was tying up cash that we needed. So, yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to give you credit for is figuring out how you got to control your manufacturing. There's this great story about Reebok back in 2002, where they had to put a guy on a plane, the son of Paul Fireman, Dennis Baldwin, and he walked over with a check for, I believe, a couple million to pay the Korean factory guys so he could get the whole plant and kick everybody else out. And I was going, this is really war. And what you talk about in the book is that you had to control your manufacturing so you kept the quality of shoes up. I mean, in the 90s, there was a stories like Adidas was manufacturing in Yugoslavia, and I would try to get the shoes from Yugoslavia because the quality was better than the stuff coming out of Asia at the time. How did you manage that situation?
Larry, and I heard that when I came in the industry in 2001, I heard that from so many retailers that, fit was just absolutely essential. And you could have the number one shoe in the space, but if the new update didn't fit right, they weren't going to sell it. They'd ship it back to you. So fit was so critical. And the truth was that in those days, the controls weren't that great for any brand. And so if you had the same shoe coming out of two factories, it actually fit differently. And the especially run retailers, knew that. So, we got religion around fit, feel, and ride. And I think it was so foundational for us, Larry, because in those early days, there were so many great brands and there was so much visible technology on the leading brands, on several of them. And we didn't have that. So we went for fit, feel, and ride at mile 20 from the frequent runner. We were just going to put our foot down and really trying to win over that trust from the frequent runner who knew 20 miles into the shoe if they'd ever buy it again. We were really working for the second shoe. And so therefore it wasn't about glitz and color. Our first, adrenaline that really broke through, the Adrenaline 4, was in one color for 18 months. And it was a breakthrough product for us because with the new stability technology we had at the time was such a smooth transition. It was just a great shoe. And so we built our success with frequent runners on fit, feel, and ride. And that's where the factory was essential because, if you just build it in a different line, you can have everything in the patterns the same in the last, but depending on how they lasted in the manufacturing line, it could fit completely different. And so all those details from wear testing to really controlling the production process to get consistency is what we've been all about. And we've missed some over 20 years, right? But more often than not, we hit the mark on fit, feel, and ride.
Brooks also knows who their friends are. I mean, I love the bit in here with Tom Rayner at Fleet Feet. And I recall going to one of his annual conventions, and we're sitting down having a beverage, and he goes, "How would you describe this?" And I said, "Half Southern Baptist, half Amway." He started laughing. But the thing about Tom was he really believed in what you were doing, but he thought you might be a little whack. How did you convince Fleet Feet and the specialty guys that what Brooks was doing, kind of going its own way, totally doing the specialty retailer approach, made sense?
The early days were a challenging time for me and for Brooks, right? They'd had several years of challenges. And so Tom, I consider a mentor and a fantastic partner and just a super wise guide in this category. And like everybody, he wasn't the only one that told me that. Like everybody, they were concerned because there was so much change and turmoil at Brooks, from owners to CEOs. Since Helen had left the company, we kind of went sideways. And so, I think everyone was concerned, Larry, but here's what I learned later on. And part of it was in conversations I had with Jerry Turner over the next decade. The whole mindset in our industry of you can't just make one category. You got to have three legs of the stool, whether it's pricing, good, better, best, or across categories from running to training to court, what have you, was because of all the fashion cycles and, truthfully, keeping a factory busy. But with modern supply chains, that went away. So we have, when we're running only, we ride the curve in running in the category, but we're okay with that. And I think, the bet we were making is that focus would give us an advantage to build better gear and engage successfully with the best retailers and these frequent runners and everyone else in run. And that was the bet we were making. But look, at the time, I had more than one retailer say, "Jim, you're the fourth person to have this job in 2 years. I've heard this before. Good luck to you." So I think that, the challenge, Larry, for me was we had to earn the trust of everyone, right? We had to earn the trust of the runner, of the retailer. We had to earn the trust of our banks, our employees. The employees had a pool on how long I'd last because there'd been so much change. And we had to earn the trust of our owners and our investors. And in the early days, I was working that entire puzzle as effectively as I could, but I knew we'd have to earn it. Ultimately, we're going to have to earn that trust. So fortunately, I'm still here so far.
I use the title entrepreneur sometimes for the guys, men and women, who are kind of doing the business thing. But a lot of times there's somebody doing the financial stuff and somebody doing the other things. You were doing everything. And the begging for dollars, which I have some life experience with, that's got to be the toughest part, especially when you go into a meeting like there was a part in here where you were talking about deciding to take the Brooks job, and you went and spent a little time in Connecticut with the investors. Mm-hmm. And when you knew you were going to have the $7 million you needed to manage that cash flow, then you were ready to roll. Did you have to do a big presentation about that? Was this something that was this a weeks of discussions? Was it trying to convince them and they're going, "Yeah, Jim, we like you, man, but why are we going to put this money into it?"
It's always a dance, Larry. There's lots of conversations over weeks and weeks and weeks. They had big investment. They had their decision on follow-on investment to stabilize the company and the balance sheet because the banks were not willing to move forward. That was a big investment decision for them that was independent of what I did, because otherwise the bank was going to quit, and that would not be good. So they made that decision, but that was key at our darkest hour. J.H. Whitney, with a lot of ambiguity and no clarity, decided to recapitalize the company, and that was a huge step. But even then, once I got in the door, our bankers had been in the deal for quite a while. There was a lot of debt on the company, and they made it very clear: get us out, get us out, get us out. And so we were out of the woods, I think, from an existential standpoint. But we had lots of cash flow issues. We had too much, in our industry is so driven by inventory on the apparel and footwear side, Larry, and you never have the perfect amount, too much, too little, and we had way too much at that time.
Yeah, when I've been asked about what business I would never have, and I said an apparel business, I think is worse than an ad agency. And you guys went into it I thought the way that you approached it going into sporting bras was brilliant. And when you got to that realization that sporting bras are like running shoes, it's all about the fit and the feel. How did that come about? Because your approach to women's apparel, I think, has been brilliant.
Larry, it's just interesting, right? I think when you look at Brooks 20 years ago, what we really did is we said, look, this is the broader athletic footwear and apparel market is very populated with fabulous brands and great companies. And so we said, okay, we're gonna be a gear company. I mean, that's really what we did in performance run footwear. First is we're creating gear for runners, because the footwear business is so much bigger. Most of it never goes for a run. It's casual, fashion, lifestyle, family footwear. Now in apparel's a completely different sort of purchase journey for the runner than footwear. But one item that, for women that is much more similar to shoes than not is the run bra, because millimeters matter, right? I mean, it really matters. It's a piece of gear for a runner. And so I think that's a product where we've invested, tremendously in research and development, and really trying to elevate the performance of that product for, particularly women that really need it and want it. So yeah, I think that's, there's performance in everything we build, from jackets to, shorts and shirts and the like. But in some products, I think it's just much more important for the runner, and shoes and run bras are in that category.
One of the things that you mentioned many times in the book is the example of our friend at Under Armour calling Adidas, I think the word was stupid, but also trying to take Nike head on. And what it seems, in my observing of you over the last 2+ decades, is you pick your battles, and because there's a lot at stake. And how does a company now that's at $1 billion looking to $4 billion, and was at that time at a 63 million, how the heck do you take on a company at that time that was 25 billion? And it seemed that you pick shoes like the Adrenaline, the Ghost, the Beast. You have shoes now that are 20 different evolutions away from the first shoe. And the only people back then who did that were the Japanese, our friends at ASICS. Nike changed the Pegasus every year for 26 years until they figured it out. Your Adrenaline, I mean, I've got 3 pair out, on my shelf out here, and a pair of Ghost and my Beast, and there is part of what I recall from the first time I wore a Beast, but there's also just enough evolution that your users will accept it. How do you guys put that together?
I think the context of the shoe conversation, you really set up in terms of how to think about any of our brands in this industry, Larry. And first, we come from sport, right? We're in the sports business, and it becomes more than a sport and running. It's an investment in yourself and health, wellness, and all that. But we all have, a sports mindset in the athletic footwear and apparel world. So you start with that, and then the media loves to benchmark companies one against another, of who's doing what to who, and who's winning and who's losing. And so the sports analogy just gets carried forth. And here's the truth. It's interesting, and it creates a lot of energy in a lot of people. And I get the question all the time, but the customer's in charge. The runner's in charge. It has nothing to do with our competition. It is the old, the old adage of, it's the person who, can run faster than the other because the bear will eat the other one first. I mean, it's about the customer. And so the competitive focus and energy, I believe you got to know your competition well. Why? Because those are the choices your customer has. And you want to be chosen at the margin, or you want to be chosen distinctively for what your strengths are and what you're known for. So that whole positioning against the customer is where a competitive dynamic matters. But make no mistake about it, you don't beat your competitor, you win the customer. That's what we think we've got to earn the runner every day on every product. And you've seen this category for many, many years. I just think that's what wins. It's not about, besting another brand. It's about winning the runner, winning the customer. So therefore, the approach we have, the product strategy we have is you've said it. The crazy thing about our industry, Larry, is that people are curious. They want innovation. They want new technology. They're interested and curious about new experiences in footwear in particular, for sure. And yet that fit, feel, and ride and that comfort, especially if it's super important to them from an injury or, just high mileage standpoint, that consistency from year to year is critical. So it's the insanity of our category, Larry, where, we've got to keep consistency on fit, feel, and ride while we evolve the product. And guess what? It's also personal expression. So, materials and color, all that ultimately matters, even though people say it maybe doesn't. So that's, Larry, I've often described it as somewhat like the wine business. We loved your 2016 vintage, but what did you do in 2017? The wine just didn't taste as good. So it's the insanity of our category, but it also makes it fun and exciting. And but again, so we're trying to evolve as opposed to revolutionize most of our core products, because that's what the runner expects.
Well, Jim, one of the things I think is funny as heck is that a company like Big Five was talking to you about being in a 1999 category. And now I see you guys the average shoe being sold right now is $150. And there's, if we say that the running shoe business is about $15 billion and about 2.5 of it is $130 or more, you guys are the king of that world because you're continuing to address the needs of the consumer. I wanted to pull something from the book, and I wanted to ask you about this. And I think it should be taught in every class at Dartmouth, and also it should be a Harvard Business Review as well. It's your 5 things about reflecting on running with purpose. One is owning a niche. And you say here, pursue greatness by simultaneously owning a niche, growing and delivering premium profits consistently and over time. Have you achieved that with Brooks?
Well, yeah, because Warren Buffett fell in love with our business, and I think that consistency of having a brand that's valued by the customer can kind of stand in the marketplace and earn that customer over time, and do it in a way where you're actually making a good return. That's the puzzle. That's hard. And by the way, grow double digits. So to me, that's what a great business is. And we've always wanted, aspired to and challenged ourselves to be a great business. But the niche thing is interesting, Larry, and I talk about this in the book. In every category, there's sort of one dominant platform brand. And we have one of those in our category. And often I say is, look, if you're not that brand, you probably are best to find a niche. And define yourself, choose a customer. That's the biggest choice you get to make, is which customer you're going to focus on, and then deliver a brand ethos that can resonate and you believe can win the day with that customer. That's what we're doing. And I remain excited because I think, in a way, we're the only brand that is celebrating the sport and the pursuit of the run attached to performance products as it's all we do. Every day, that's what we wake up and try to solve for at Brooks. And we've been doing that for 20 years. And we see ourselves doing that for as far as we can see, because running is such a great category. So yeah, I think that's the niche piece. And then again, I believe we're having to do that profitably and consistently, because that's keep playing, right? That's how you get to keep investing. So that's everybody laughs at the word flywheel. It's kind of a cliche, but that is the flywheel in building a brand. So we're focused.
I love the build a moat, and I never thought about it that way. But what you've done with Brooks has made it so darn expensive for any of your competitors to come at where you're at, that they've got to go, what do we really want to do? Can you explain your whole idea of building a moat?
I think, yeah, and it goes first right to brand. What does your brand stand for? And I think great brands, Larry, have all the complexity of a human being. They have values and philosophies and sensibilities and personalities and so on and so forth. And so for us, Brooks is a unique brand, and it's not going to have 100% market share. But we think, it's performance product in a really smart, thoughtful way with a celebration of your run. No matter if it's your 20th marathon or your first 5K, we're going to celebrate you and your run. That's what Run Happy is. So that's our brand. Now that's what's in the mind of the customer. That's our moat. It really begins there. And then there's other things in the way we do business and the way we manage our product lines and our inventories and our business model that is part of our profit, sort of formula. But at the end of the day, it's really that brand ethos in the mind of the customer. And so we got to earn that every day, right? We're trying to build consistent product and great experiences. Larry, in these categories, in performance, enthusiast, sporting goods, the product experience is almost always the first experience somebody has with your brand. And you can't disappoint on the product experience. Or it doesn't matter what your awareness is if nobody that really is discerning would ever buy your products. So it's all related to that. And we're a performance running company, so it really does start with product. But all of that is in our brand, which is what we're really trying to build a moat around. And that the strength of that moat is in the mind of the customer. How strong, how much affinity they have for Brooks, and would they buy us again?
I like the solve for profitability, but the one I love is, and there should be a T-shirt with this, vision without execution is hallucination. Totally cool. Explain that for us, please.
Well, I was kind of guilty of it early in my career, I would say, Larry, because I love strategy, I love brands, and I love the puzzle of how to solve, for the white space in the marketplace and where you can put your brand and your products and all of that. And then, of course, you attach it to vision and purpose. And early on, when we stumbled and we weren't quite executing well, a friend of mine said exactly that, Jim, vision's great, but without execution, it's kind of like hallucination. And there's so much truth, especially now in this day and age, Larry, and at scale, it is all about execution. And we're all of us in business are learning that with the supply chain challenges and the like, right? But it's all about execution. We have a beautiful strategy on paper on a whiteboard. Doesn't matter. You gotta be able to follow through all the way to the customer with it.
You talk about leading authentically, and I think that's one of the things that you do. But I'm going to focus on the part in humility. I've watched you over 20 years, and you guys try all kinds of things. I remember Dave Larson, your former VP of marketing, and we had so much fun together. I do enjoy those days. His stuff was crazy, but you empowered him to do it. And I think that's the thing about good management. But you guys when you tried to do those minimalist shoes, they were cool. But as you said, the consumer said some of them liked them, some of them didn't. And you learned lessons from that. And then you had in the book, you talk about a distribution center that was just an absolute nightmare. And I thought those were really honest, because most business books talk about how groovy you are and, man, how you're so enlightened and you saw the burning bush and everything was great. But as you and I know, for every good step, there's 5 kind of, you kind of screw up a little bit. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in managing Brooks for the last 2+ decades?
I think that there's so many layers of it, Larry. First, I'd say Dave Larson is just one of the most creative, experiential marketers ever, and really brought Brooks alive, in critical years when people really didn't know anything about our brand. And yeah, I think that, humility is an interesting word. I think if you're open to learning things, if you're curious, and you don't know everything, you're intensely listening and learning from people. And, and then there's the times where you do make mistakes and you face plant. And we've done that. Sometimes you get challenges that are just out of your control, and everybody's dealing with them. Pandemic was one. But sometimes they're self-inflicted and they're affecting our customers. So in those moments, you just got to own them, because we do. We got to own them because we're on it. We should have seen some things that we didn't see. We should have understood the risks that we were taking. I think some of the fit challenges on key products over the years, so much of it is when we're changing, growing, and scaling. And so I think that's what I've learned as a leader. I mean, more than ever now at our scale, it's about our people and our culture and our, our playbook to get everybody working as a team. And you can only do that, with a trust-based environment, I view, and being authentic, because people have to work together and trust each other. So that's sort of a timeless truth, I believe. But yeah, I think now it's also connected to our values and our brand and what we're all about. We're trying to be on the inside, essentially everything we promise and present on the outside. I think great brands are like that. Almost always there's an incredible culture underneath a great brand. And so at Brooks, we're really trying to build that out and bring everybody into it to be a part of it as they bring their best self to the team, right? Everybody adds to the team, but in total, we want to be Brooks at our best that we promise to customers on the outside.
You talk very pointedly about your battling cancer, which I understand. Like you, I'm a cancer survivor, and you talk about kind of the lessons you learned from that, but also how running the brand kind of gave you some focus as well as your family. And, I've met your wife and get a total charge out of her and your boys. And I remember one of your sons is a big guitarist. And I think it was the time I got to go to the first PR invite and got to hang out a little bit and chat. But you talk about that strength. And I think that's really important because we have our business lives, but we have the people we care about. Is there a lesson that you've learned from being on this side of cancer?
Larry, I think you learn a lot when you go through something like that. The Cancer Club's horrible. You and I are both members of it now. I don't recommend it. But I think, when you get into that situation, there's a lot of uncertainty and you're going to go through all the process of chemo and radiation. I had 2 major surgeries, not fun. But I think when you stare it in the face, I believe you just get a sense of what really makes you tick and where you sit in life and how you feel about it. So for me, the stock I took of where I was in life, I felt grateful because great job, great family. I've achieved and been doing everything I've always wanted to do. And if I could keep it the same, I would have. That's what I learned. I didn't get the diagnosis and say, I'm going to quit and go play golf or travel the world. I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. But what I found out is that it was much more serious for my wife and my 3 boys and their kids. We have 4 grandchildren because, for them, me being out of the picture was a big deal. So, I think that's the point where I just said, man, I'm going to fight this thing with all I've got. And it's about, taking, everything that you have in the moment, enjoying it every day, making the most of it every day, because you just never know how many more you have. But I just didn't, everybody's different. But for me, I did not want to live in fear every day of what I had to lose. I just didn't want to wake up and be in grief and worry about my situation, what I had to lose. I wanted to take in everything that was positive in the day. And so, but everybody's different. I think everyone has to process those existential moments. And it was one for me, for sure, in their own way.
I like your intro from Warren Buffett, who is, one of my rock stars out there. I just love hearing him talk. And it's fascinating to see people in business and finance, investing in times that are crazy. And I think that's when he does best. I'm fascinated with the whole thing. But what he talks about here is his unique relationship with you. How do you feel that? And did you sense that early on when you were starting to work with Berkshire?
It's interesting, Larry. I first met Warren. He invited me out to talk about Brooks. And I had been reading his letters for over 2 decades. I felt like I knew him. I felt like I knew how he thought about brands and businesses. And I learned a lot from those letters that influenced how I thought about Brooks. And so, just the way we were building the brand, we weren't trying to be anybody else. We were trying to be Brooks and build out a profitable franchise and over time build a brand. And we were having success and growing it with good profitability. I thought, okay, he's going to get what we're doing here. And so that first meeting, my goal was I want him to fall in love with this brand. And so I did most of the talking. I wasn't going to do the, starstruck thing, even though I was, because he's just a brilliant business person. And then he's a wonderful human being. He's super warm and focused, but he just gets brands. And so, yeah, that first meeting, I think his interest was piqued, and within a year, he basically rolled us into Berkshire as a standalone sub, and that was a huge win for Brooks. Just a huge win to have, Berkshire as our owners. We're trying to navigate and build this brand in this industry.
It was fascinating going to the Running Insight show every year for over a decade. I remember the first couple of years when it started. You guys, Brooks was a big supporter. Brands like Nike and some of the others were not supporting it. And what happened is all the brands came in, but what you guys did is you used Running Insight to further your relationship with retailers. If we look at the world now, brands like Nike seem to be pulling away from specialty retail. And I get phone calls from guys very upset that they made these guys very wealthy and they're not dealing with that. But brands like Brooks seem to very emphatically say, this is our world. Yeah, we've got to do digital, but we're taking care of you guys. And the brands that are doing that are the ones that seem to be successful in this day and age. How would you comment on that? What's your observation there?
I've been at this a while, Larry, and you just watch the ebb and flow of brands that come in and come out of the running category. It's interesting. And so in the early days at Brooks, we were distribution driven. So if you wanted to grow sales, you went where the shoes were sold. It was that simple. So you went to the mall and Foot Locker and Finish Line, and you went to Family Footwear and Famous Footwear, and because that's where all the shoes were sold. And now if you do that, you're going online and lots of these other places. We flip that around because we're chasing runners around. That's what we're doing. We're not chasing sales. We are chasing runners. And I just think that you can't own the runner. And is that humility? I don't know. I think it's reality. I think you got to earn the runner's trust to have them, be your brand of choice and your gear of choice. And guess what? They shop at specialty. And specialty run is still the curators of the best product our category has to offer. And they help match that product to runners and what they need. And they're so trusted at that. They're curators of the best gear. And they're community centers for run, from high school and coaches to events and all of the stuff, the running groups and the club. The best ones are community running shops. And again, running is so big and diverse. This is the other thing I've always believed, and we build our strategy off this, Larry, is that nobody can own running. It's too big and diverse. You want to have an owned retail and direct-to-consumer strategy with no, wholesale partners. You're not going to reach enough runners. You're just not. Because they're in specialty, they're in sporting goods, and yes, they're online. So I would describe it as we're chasing runners around, and we want to be where they shop. And we're trying to build partnerships with the best retailers in run to present Brooks to them and give us a shot at getting on their feet. So yeah, I think that's different. Most people don't think about it that way because they have more complexity in their customer base. We just focus on people that put one foot in front of another. That's all we do. So we don't chase sales. We chase runners, I would say.
You also do that in your sports marketing. You've had a long-term relationship with Hanson's Distance Project, two of the most whacked out human beings in the world, and I dearly love them, but they develop athletes. Danny Mackey, who is so possessed by the scientific method that his athletes adore him. And, you just had Josh Kerr go a screaming mile, breaking the European and British record. And what I really liked, I got a release, I think it was yesterday, or maybe it was today, about Des Linden having two roles at your company now. And I thought that Julie Culley, your VP of Sports Marketing, she said it perfectly. It's not that you're not retiring, Des. You're expanding what she's doing. And most brands would have kind of said, kind of put them out to pasture, or what we've seen over the last 2 years, a lot of your competitive brands just dump athletes when they're near, when they're at a new place in their career. But Des is going to run forever. I mean, I send notes to her. We tease each other about coffee, and she reminded me that, whiskey is bourbon. And, when I want to see my numbers go up, I just put a Des thing up and we get 50,000 tweets in a few hours. So the woman just transcends what it is to be an elite runner. And you guys get that. There's athletes out there that do that. Garrett Heath, what Josh is doing. Nia Atkins is a lot of fun. I mean, I didn't know she was into music, and those kind of things make her more human. And I think that you figured out how to make a running brand human. And that's something that I guess was your plan when you were in 7th grade. You wanted to run a brand, so you've achieved it for a while. So your 7th grade self would be very happy with you right now.
Well, I feel like I feel like I have the best job in the entire industry, Larry. I really do. I'm grateful. I love being part of a team that's building something. It's just so much fun. It's not always easy, but it's rewarding. And so I feel super fortunate to where I'm at. And I think your comments on athletes in the sport, I think at the core, I never forget the day we partnered with Hanson's in the early 2000s. We were re-entering the sport. It had been years since we had team kits and spikes, and we had some racing flats, but we just hadn't been in a position to invest in the sport. It changed our culture, and we built on from there. And, I think, do athletes inspire? Are you kidding, right? It is about inspiring the next generation. And then some athletes transcend that, like Des. Scott Jurek was another one that just become hugely influential for the broader sport and running in general. So, the coolest thing about Des's journey is that, for me, and I've told her this, is that people have really gotten to know who she is, which is just pure fun. She's such a unique person and a powerful force in our sport. It just makes me smile that people are getting to know who she really is and what she's all about.
Well, I want to tell you something. Mike, your book, the review's going up this week, and I'm going to give you 5 track spikes because, Jim, that's the biggest I can do, buddy. But what's good about it is it's not just a business book. I think coaches can learn from it, and I think athletes can. But those kids at Dartmouth, and I hear it's a fine school. I used to live in Peterborough, so I know where Dartmouth is. There's other schools that I appreciate too, but we'll say something nice about Dartmouth. But great job. Thank you for giving us a chance to interview. And I think we're one of the first to interview you, so I do appreciate that. And I hope to see you at upcoming events this spring.
Absolutely, Larry. Thank you for the time. It was fun to chat.
Thank you. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. It's Socialing the Distance. Today we're reviewing Jim Weber, not only CEO of Brooks Running, but he also is a first author. You should read this book, Running with Purpose. We'll have the link on how you can buy it on our website this week. Jim, thanks again. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. I just interviewed Jim Weber, Brooks CEO and new author. This is his book, Running with Purpose. It's our feature this week on Socialing the Distance. I have 3,500 running books behind me. Everything from stuff, my oldest is from 1886. It's an annual, I believe. I have the Spalding annuals from 1910, 1911, all that stuff. I have a clean pair of heels with Murray Halberg. Don't have many business books. This is one of the few business books I'll put on these shelves. Why? Jim Weber is a very good writer. He should write a couple other books, but he's a really unique guy. He has managed Brooks in 22 years through 4 different owners. One of the first things the guy did, and I remember this, is he just let his biggest client, Big Five, go because he wasn't making any money off them. They were a $62 million brand. They owed money to everybody. And what did he do? He let the biggest guy go because it didn't make sense. He had this vision thing. And the people around him, while some of them were betting on how long he would last, and I understand that the average bet was he would make it 4 months because there had been 4 CEOs before him in the last 2 years that followed Helen Rocky, who had been there for 7 years. But yeah, the book is a really nice job. It's a business book. It's also about his life and his family. support of his wife, Mary Ellen, and his sons and his grandkids through not only running Brooks and the lessons he learned. And what I thought was really cool is, oh my gosh, he has some humility, but he's also extremely tactical. If you've read The Art of War or von Clausewitz's 7 Principles of War, you'll understand that a lot of times you don't take on somebody bigger than you head on. And Jim Weber gets that. He tells the story with some self-deprecation. There's some funny moments in there. There's some very poignant moments in here. He talks about some of the mistakes that they made and how he learned from them. And I try to tell young entrepreneurs that I never learned anything from my wins. I learned them all from my failures. And when you get to, our age, you have a few of those. He also talks about battling cancer, which was really a shitstorm, man. It will tear you up. And having been a cancer survivor, I understand it. I was much luckier than some of the stuff he had to deal with. But probably the most important thing is the intro. It's by Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett may be the most thoughtful financial business genius in the world today. The guy gets business, but he also gets how it's all part of the culture of the zeitgeist. And he realized when he bought Fruit of the Loom owned Brooks. And this was something unique that Buffett did within Berkshire Hathaway. And he says it here, that he never he knew Jim Weber did not need to report to anybody but him, Buffett. He's given Weber the room to grow the brand. And in that time, it's went from, I think, about 340 million to $1 billion. And then by 2030, Jim sees it as being a possible $4 billion brand. I thought he was smoking crack when he said he was going to hit $1 billion. I remember 4 years ago, we're going, whoa, I think I was at the breakfast at the show in Salt Lake City, the winter show. And he did this little breakfast for the media. And I was sitting there with a couple of my journal buddies, and we just said, wow, Jim's smoking the crack pipe. It was pretty good. But anyway, Jim wasn't smoking the crack pipe. They've done it. The other thing that Weber does is he recognizes the help he's had from the incredible team he has at Brooks. I remember about 2010, 2011, Dave Larson invited me in to hang out for the day. And I sat in the cafeteria and worked on my laptop, and I heard laughter in the cafeteria. And I have worked in cafeterias of virtually every brand, but I've never seen the kind of collegiality that I saw at Brooks. Now, again, it's a little smaller brand, but the people get it. It's more than a job. We used to talk about how when you're at Nike, you drank the Kool-Aid, and the people did, and then they got kind of dumped. At Brooks, the people really believe in what they're doing. They got a great crew. And this book tells that story. It's something that some other brands who are totally screwing the pooch could learn from. But yeah, Jim gets it. And I think this book is one you guys would like to read. I did not know what I was going to get, man. And I read a lot of books, and a lot of books I go, take a nap through. But yeah, I'm reading every page of this one. And a lot of good lessons. And if you went to Dartmouth, where he went, I think he went to the Tuck School there, but other business schools you can learn from. But coaches can learn from it too. And you know what? If you're thinking about doing a business, if you just want to learn about life lessons and make your own mistakes, read the book, Running with Purpose. It's nicely done. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, Socialing the Distance, your favorite podcast. And this week we had Jim Weber, the CEO of Brooks Running, a Berkshire Hathaway company. And he is also a new author of the book, Running with Purpose. We'll have the information up on the site on how you can purchase the book. Have a great day. Get your running in, get your jumping in, get your throwing in. Tell someone you love them. Stay safe. If you're inside and you feel like wearing a mask, wear a mask, okay? This stuff isn't over yet. But thank you again for watching our stuff. Thanks to Mike Deering, our creative and production manager at The Shoe Addicts, the group that manages most of our podcast. And he has to put up with me almost every day, which, the guy really, is kind of saintly. All right. Have a good one. Take care.